spend a dollar over here.
Nickel on the dollar.
Oh, you can start. Fran's not going to be here today.
Oh.
You go right ahead. Yeah, go right.
Just so you're gonna-
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much and welcome. I'd like to convene a regular meeting of the Lake Lore Town Council this May 5th, 2018. I'd like to welcome all of the public here, and I'd ask you to please rise. We'll begin with an invocation. If you would, gentlemen, who have caps, please remove them. Others, please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, thank you for the many blessings you've bestowed on our community. As we gather here in public service to our town and its citizens, we ask for your divine guidance and wisdom to help us govern efficiently and effectively and do what serves the greater good and best interest of our citizens. And to be good stewards and guardians of this beautiful place that we call home. In your name, we humbly ask these things. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Now we'll say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Okay. Well, let us begin to move down through the agenda with the adoption of the agenda. And so our council members have an agenda, and I'll call now for any changes, revisions, additions, so what have you.
Mr. Mayor, under 11C, some of us have agendas that say 6 p.m. and it should say 5 p.m.
Okay.
For that hearing that we're going to be calling for.
Okay.
Also, under item 12, we have a closed session scheduled under A5 for purpose of discussing property acquisition.
Yes, sir.
And we need to add under GS 143-318.11 sub A sub 6 for the purpose of discussing personnel matters.
All right. So
Other than that, no other changes.
Commissioner Weber has made the motion of those two changes. Any others?
I'll second the motion.
All right, second by Commissioner Cameron. Then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, well, that brings us to item number 3, which are my comments, the mayor's comments, and I have a few to make this evening. First of all, I want to remind members of the public that we have a session for public comment. Pretty much anything that you want to bring to the attention of the council and the public who are here. We have a sign-up sheet over on the small table here on the side. I would ask you now or during the meeting, if you haven't signed up, to please sign up. We typically will limit the comments depending on the number of people. If we don't have a lot, then we'll limit them to 5 minutes. And the other reminder would be is that we conduct our meetings here in the town council in accordance with the community covenant that we adopted, which provides ourselves with guidelines for conducting civil discourse during our meetings. So just a reminder that we have those two things. A couple things have occurred this week that I find to be extremely uplifting as a citizen of Lake Lore and a member of the town council. Many of you, I hope, had an opportunity to attend these two events that I think are a great way to begin our season here in the Gorge. The first one occurred on Thursday morning, out at Lake Lore Classical Academy. And we had a wonderful turnout of students and members of the community who celebrated the groundbreaking for the new gymatorium. That gymatorium is I refer to as sort of the missing piece of our school. And we finally found that piece and are putting it in place. And we all celebrated that. And Patrick McHenry, our U.S. Congressman, was there to wish us well and give us some remarks. And I just think it was a wonderful gathering of the community for a wonderful, wonderful purpose. Then again on Friday morning, we were able once again to gather together out in the old King Ranch property to celebrate the ribbon cutting for the expansion of the Buffalo Creek Park that's there. We've expanded that park from 300 acres to now over 1,500 acres as a town of Lake Lure recreational asset. In addition, within the park boundaries now, we celebrated we did a groundbreaking, or a ribbon cutting is what we did, for the 8.5-mile Weed Patch Trail that connects from an existing loop trail out there in the park up to Eagle Rock, I think it is, Eagle Rock. And so it's, again, another wonderful asset in our community, something represented a wonderful partnership between the town of Lake Lure and Conserving Carolina. And many of the folks in the community have volunteered their time, including the Parks and Rec Advisory Board. And so we want to congratulate everybody and, again, thank them for doing that. As our tourist season is approaching, the town, as you may have noticed, is sprucing up. That's part of an organized campaign throughout the summer that we'll be engaging in, kind of getting ourselves ready, in a sense, to put on our best face for the World Equestrian Games that are coming up in September. So we're going to spend the summer doing a little extra sprucing up, and the town is playing its part. You'll notice the Public Works staff have been out planting some beautiful gardens around town. And the additional initiative or project that's going on is a project that's being done from a volunteer base. The Flowering Bridge Group is engaged in a project they're calling The Power of the Flower. I think I got that right. And that's going to be a program where all along the commercial corridor in Lake Lure here, Memorial Highway and Chimney Rock Village, merchants, businesses, and some private residents will agree to put out some flowering baskets or pots and, kind of color up the gorge. And so that'll be going on all summer as well. Two wonderful programs here that I think we'll all appreciate when they're done. So that concludes my comments for this and moves us into item number 4, which is the town manager's communications. Ron?
Thank you, Mayor. Just have a few updates for you, and I've lost a couple of our staff members, so I'm not sure if we're going to have an update on the hydroelectric plant. Is Donnie hiding back there somewhere? I don't see him. I know that the work is proceeding on the unit, and I do not know a completion date. I know that some of the items had to be returned, repurposed, and then were sent back to us. So they are slowly putting those back together. David wanted me to express his apologies. He did get sick this afternoon, but the cofferdam report is that he just needed more time, some additional time to put some information together, so he plans to have it to you next month.
Did you authorize him to get sick?
I did not. He just chose to do so. Dean tried to get sick, but he actually showed up, so I appreciate that, Dean. Dean is here to talk real quick about the small pond repair update.
The information that on the small pond repair, we put in a report for you. I guess just need to see if you guys have any questions or concerns with the plan going forward. We feel like that we're so late in the year. If we bid this project out, it's, we're going to be in full swing of summer while we're out there on the side of the road and hindering Lake Lure Landing and doing this work. So we, after speaking with the engineer, he agreed that he thinks that we can fill the pond and make it through fall or after the WEG situation and then repair the pond. That way we're kind of getting into off season and not affecting our citizens and visitors.
We can go ahead and send out the bids.
We can.
And get them all back and do whatever we have to do and be ready. and put a start date for like November or December, or?
Yes, sir.
That way it'd be ready for that.
Yes, sir.
So everybody knows we're talking about the small pond over by Reegular Landing, is what we're talking about.
What about could we go ahead and take some of that sediment out of there and haul some of that away in advance?
It's going to be done at the same time. Whoever does the spillway repair,
Right.
as they get done with spillway repair, they're going to clean the pond out again.
Okay.
Unless if you guys want us to move now and move, act quicker, then that's fine. My only concern of bringing this to you was just to make sure we didn't get into,
Right.
tourist season.
I was just hoping that we'd get some of that soil out of there. I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with the spillway. It would just give you
Right.
some more depth there and it's going to have to be removed one way or the other
Yeah.
anyway.
But do we have the capability in-house of dredging that, or we'd have to bid that out too?
That it'd have to be bid out to somebody with a long reach excavator, and that's also going to tear up the grass and everything alongside of the road. It has to be re-sowed and everything, but.
Good operator wouldn't mess it up too bad, but
Well, that's fine. I mean,
Yeah, no, I'm
I'm
just
not
trying
arguing
to-
with you. Whatever you want to do, we can do. I can make it happen.
How long would it require? How long would the equipment be there and the actual dredging be?
I'd say on just the dredging, I'd say probably about a week. I'm guessing, I'm not a dredger, but, or excavator, but I'd say probably roughly a week they would be there, and cleaning the stuff out would be a guess.
or we just say, 2 or 3 days and just give it time and material and get it cleaned out. It's going to be hauled away one way or the other, so.
Would it be worth it to mobilize for that short time and try to get back out of there before the end of Memorial Day? Which
Well,
is
not
only
before-
3 weeks away now?
Yeah, not Memorial Day. It wouldn't be worth it, no.
Yeah, well, that's what we're facing.
Don't I remember, Dean, that the upper part of that's considered wetland or marsh or something, and we can't do any excavating in that? Is that?
Yes, sir. It'd be the extreme upper end of it. It was cleaned out just a few years ago. So, there's, my guess would be the worst case situation, there would just be a little more for them to clean out in the fall than what they're cleaning out now. I don't believe it would be a big impact.
Is that project then covered with a permit from Diener or someone that
Yes, sir.
regulates and do we have that permit?
For the dredging, for that project, permit's not required for long reach excavation,
Okay.
as long as it's handled one time, because it's not having to be water,
Okay,
so it shouldn't be any issues.
so we don't have a permit on that. Okay, all right.
Are you anticipating refilling it for the season
Yes, sir.
and then draining it again at the end of the season in order to do the work?
Yes, sir.
It's fine if you want to wait. That's fine. Just
Yeah.
try and make progress.
Right.
Is that, Ron, is that okay to do this by consensus? Do you need a motion or?
No, we were just just to let you know that the project was on hold until fall,
Okay.
unless y'all just really wanted us to
Yeah.
jump at it.
Okay.
But we knew it was going to impact the season, so if we kept going.
I'd like to, I'd feel more comfortable with a target date. Doesn't have to be in stone, but
Okay.
a target date instead of saying until fall.
Okay.
So what are we talking? 1 October, 1
When-
November, 15 November?
When is
When-
the World Equestrian Games stuff supposed to be over with?
11th.
That'll be over in
14th, 11th
September.
till like.
Well, then
the
I'll have this
25th.
project going in right after that.
So
When
October
the
1.
equestrian
October 1?
games
October
are
1.
over with, I can get the project started immediately after, so it's not impacting
So
tourism.
we want to say October 1st, we should have our bids in back then, decided, ready to mobilize?
Right.
Okay. Sounds good, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Ron?
that.
Yes, sir.
Is, on the hydro, I don't guess the small generator's back up and running?
It is not, no, sir. We were just down there, and they are slowly putting it back together.
Are they having problems, and is it due to know-how, or is it due to things that were done when the stuff was rehabbed?
No, I think this is my personal opinion. I don't know if Donnie would disagree, but My personal opinion is we have one person working on this project, John, and it is a big project. And it is taking him more time than what was originally planned for.
Is he our staff or
He is a contractor.
contractor?
Yes.
Would it behoove us to try and get him some help, or would they just be in the way?
The contractor feels that they would just be in the way.
Okay.
We can have more discussion about that if you like. Sorry, that was it.
We may have already covered this in other meetings, and I don't remember, but is it the case that because we have the large generator functioning there, that we're not sacrificing any power generation as a result of having the small generator out of service?
I don't know if that's true. It seems like I remember Donnie saying that with both operating, we
Yep.
produce more and make more.
There are times when both operate, when we have a lot of water
Based on
coming
water
through.
supply.
So there are times, if you only have one generator, that some water has to go over the spillway, over the gates.
I'd like to know what that is,
Okay.
on a daily basis, or, I know it's difficult to predict the flow, but I'd like to know what it is if it was flowing full. We have a major storm at the sacrifice.
Well, I've expressed from the get-go a concern about, of course, both generators were 1919 models. And though they had not been used when they were put into place here and started being used in 27, I'm concerned about problems with the big generator, and I noticed on the Public Works report this month that one day, April the 10th, the big generator wouldn't start. John had to make some adjustments to relays, and he got the unit back to working. Well, that was very lucky. It could have been any number of things, and I am concerned about that happening more frequently since we've been using it constantly, except for the time we were down for the power generation and nothing else. So I'm worried about that big generator and possible problems there. So that's why I'm concerned about if there's some way we could speed up getting the small generator put back into place and back into operation. So
We had an evaluation on those generators a couple of years ago. Do we have that?
There are boxes of information that may be in there. I don't recall it offhand, but I know they did the study about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So we can look for that.
Okay, yeah, I remember they were evaluated when we, before we started the small generator repair. I thought they looked at both of them then, and I don't remember exactly what the particulars were, but, there's an evaluation done. It'd be good to get refreshed on that.
Okay.
Well, we had that when the guy came in from the company to
Yeah.
update us on the small one. He did on the big one. It says, the large one's gonna need this, this, and this, which are a lot of the same problems the small one had, but the whole point of the matter is we put that large one through such paces the whole time that the small one's been down, and I'm sure that we've accelerated some of those potential issues in the process, so.
Also, on these relays, we need to go ahead and make sure they've ordered new relays. They're mechanical devices, so I'd like to know if they've got the new parts and ordered, because those are easily replaced, but they're critical for the operation.
Well, I think the big point is they're critical to our revenue.
Yep.
And I think it needs to be a priority item. I mean, I'm not saying it's not been a priority item now, but here we are, how many months,
Almost a year.
almost a year. And I don't know, I'm not the engineer that knows what to do about it, but we ought to be able to find somebody that can. But, it's too critical for us to, every month, we still are right here and we don't have a clue what's happening. So, somebody we need to,
We'll put together a report for you and get it back.
okay.
Thanks. Okay.
When would we get that?
Report.
Give me at least 2 weeks. So. May be able to get it to you sooner, but
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, just another quick one that crossed my desk. We appreciate sort of the eagle eye of a fellow citizen who chose to give us a call. Had a person drop by their home about a water filtration problem. And it may be a scam. We don't know for sure. We're investigating it. But wanted to let folks know publicly that someone is going around and for $1,500 they will install water filtration system to handle radiological contaminants in your water after doing a simple test. Just so folks know, radiological testing for those types of contaminants need to be done in a lab. They can't go to the back of their pickup truck or their truck and do those and then tell you that you have a problem and they found it, which is what the report was that this person was given. What we want to say is that it's simply not true, that our water is safe. We have one violation, which is a reporting violation, and that's a paperwork violation. So for someone to stop at your house and say that there was a violation about your water, it's true, but what they're telling you after that may not be true. So we just tell folks to use caution when folks drive up to your home. Please call us, please call the police department, or certainly our water department. So thank you for that.
Okay, good.
When did that happen?
Looks like the second week of April.
Okay, if there's anything else?
Well, I wanted to go back to the dam on one other thing, and that was on the hoist. And I saw it here a minute ago. The hoist and the head gate up there for
The inlet.
the last I heard is from David was that we could not get anybody to volunteer to try and use a crane, and it wouldn't reach, and that we might have to use a helicopter to lift that out. So he was researching that, and I was wondering if you've gotten any new information on that.
He had a price that was, a price for a scope of work that was due back today. I do not know if we've received that. He was still waiting on it last time I talked to him, which was this morning.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that, and as soon as we know something,
Okay.
that's another very critical aspect of our power generation.
Sure is.
So,
It's a safety issue. Okay, with more to come, you'll check that out and send us a report. Okay, that brings us to item number 5 on our agenda, which is a public hearing. And this is a hearing in regards to ordinance number 180508. It's an ordinance amending the soil erosion and sedimentation control regulations of Chapter 96 Code of Ordinances for the town of Lake Lure. We've had a sign-up sheet. If anybody has not signed up to speak on the ordinance, please do. And I see, it's written in invisible ink, that there are no names here. So we have a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
All right.
Second.
Second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, and we will come back to that ordinance. It is a very significant ordinance of the town. I would make that comment later in the agenda. And I think we'll have presentation on the ordinance. Clint, you're going to do that, and we'll have discussion about it at that time. All right, very good. All right, now we move on to item 6 on the agenda, which are presentations. We have 2 of them tonight, actually really only one. But that one we do have, and that is by Rutherford County Tourism Development Authority, the TDA. And this is kind of a follow-up presentation on the strategic plan that they've been working on, and specifically for the elements that deal with the town of Lake Lure. And Ron, you want to introduce that and our speaker?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Let me just say a few words. In March of 2017, the Rutherford County Tourism Development Authority announced that they were creating a countywide tourism strategic plan. Working with a large number of stakeholders, the final plan will direct tourism product development, maximize the use of county's TDA funds, and create opportunities for partnerships to implement the goals and action steps. The TDA during that process hired Destination by Design to assist with the development of the plan. During the summer of 2017, it was determined that additional work was needed by each of the towns, and if you'll remember, we talked about the deeper dive into specific tourism assets, and so that's what we're discussing tonight. The TDA assisted in this effort by paying 2/3 of the cost for the small plan development, and these small area plans developed through this effort will be incorporated into the final master plan. I just first wanted to say thank you to any of our TDA folks. Are there any board members in the audience? Thank you. We appreciate your support and your help with this planning effort. So thank you on the town's behalf for your work in making this happen. The small area plan concentrated on 4 areas: the marina and boardwalk, town center, beach, and Pool Creek Picnic Park. It was timely, and at least 2 of these study areas were proposed for initial funding this fiscal year. If the board will recall, to assist with that planning effort, they established a small steering committee made up of the following individuals: Chris Guffey with the NCDOT, George Whitmer with Lake Lure, James Ledgerwood with Chimney Rock State Park, Charlie Ellis with our Asset Management Board, Tom McKay with our Planning and Zoning Board, and then the time was split between our 2 mayors, Bob Keith and Kevin Cooley, so we appreciate their help. There was also a larger stakeholder group that was established to work with the steering committee and Destination by Design, and I'm just going to read off their names real quick if that's all right, because they did a lot of good work. Stephen Weber, Peter O'Leary, Jim Walters, Ed Dittmer, Mark Helms, Bill Ashman, Linda Turner, Wayne Hyatt, Richard Glasson, Kathy Tanner, Bill Massey, Bruce Barrett, Patrick Bryant, Tommy Hartzog, Andy Bell, and Don Kaysen. So again, a really good group that was working with the steering committee. We appreciate everybody's involvement and hard work in reaching this point, and we're excited about the results that you're going to see tonight. We truly believe that this will help produce some strategic base hits for the town. And tonight, Eric Woolridge is with us with Destination by Design, and he will give us a brief presentation about the strategic plan and the Lake Lure component of the plan.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. Eric Woolridge with Destination by Design. Most of you have had a chance to work with a good bit. On behalf of our firm and also the TDA, pleasure to be here. This is the first of kind of the last road show, if you will, across the entire county to share, I guess, the kind of culmination of what's really turned into a 1.5 years worth of work all across the county. And so it's a pleasure to start here in Lake Lure. I don't know how many meetings we've had, Don, but it's been a lot of meetings. And
Good meetings.
Yeah, good meetings. And it's been a pleasure to work here in Lake Lure. So with that, I'll jump into it. Like Ron mentioned, we started off with this overarching plan for the entire county, and it was designed that we would provide pretty clear direction for the TDA of how they would strategically spend their capital infrastructure dollars, so that in 10 years from now, that money's just not gone, but it has been placed very strategically. And as we started working across the entire county, we realized there's a ton of opportunities. And this vision of the visitor center, or this visitor orientation kind of hub concept and marina in Lake Lure not only got things kind of kicked off in Lake Lure, I feel like, but honestly in the whole county. Because everyone across the county saw that and said, wow, something like that could become a catalyst project, really move the needle in terms of the visitor experience and so forth. So I thought it was appropriate just to start here with this particular vision of the marina in Lake Lure. It has its place in this entire plan and so forth. But this idea of a visitor center, a gift shop, a restroom that ties to the park as well, this notion of a restaurant or bar of some sorts, this is where we start to enter into this public-private partnership, which I'm really excited about Lake Lure about. Because of you guys have multiple opportunities for that. The viewing tower and the lakeside plaza as well. Is there an opportunity for boats to come up to the marina here, dock for the day or for dinner and so forth, and head out? So we kind of started things off there. We, of course, know that we have a currently adopted town center plan. There's a lot of really good things that are inside this plan. Traffic flows very well. You've got a beautiful town green that's adjacent to your beach area. You have infill development that we hope private sector investment would come to the table and participate in. As we went through kind of the phase 1 project, Ron kept looking at me and saying, I want some basic, I want some alternatives that kind of put the ball in Lake Lore's court. As opposed to, and I would say probably one of the biggest negatives or downsides of the current town center plan is it's all predicated on a DOT project. That is not small. That is massive. And so when we set out to look at the town center, we set out just to provide you all with a completely distinctive alternative that changed the lens around which we would look at the project. First of all, we wanted the town to have control as opposed to DOT. So if the town wanted to move forward with things, what would that look like? And then secondly, what is it that we could accomplish within a shorter time frame? Okay? Some of these things tie directly into the town center core themselves, and others are on the fringes of those areas. Starting off with the marina, we came up with a concept early in the kind of the second phase for the marina area. I don't think this will work on this screen, my pointer won't. But we looked at expanding the additional boat slips. We then learned that there was some obstacles to that. But we kind of like this original idea that you all had of the angled parking, doing the seawall, and so forth. Talking to staff, Ron, Dean, they come up with a very compelling idea. Wish that our team could have taken credit for it. We took their idea of creating more of an eyelash type marina, and we started to play with that concept. It does a couple of things that we really like. Obviously, we add 90 new boat slips. So from a revenue standpoint, if you can't carry all the debt service for a project like this, you can carry a significant part of it with the additional boat slips. The boat ramp and the gas pumps would be moved to the northwest. This is significant. We now have a seamless transition between the proposed marina, visitor center, and right into your boardwalk that pushes the community or visitors, locals, towards the beach area and towards the town center. It might be the thing that I like the most about this concept. From a budgetary standpoint, this is not an inexpensive project. You could be close to $4 million to make something like this happen. Again, the private-public partnership opportunity here, and you're going to see in the culmination of this presentation that one of our recommendations is to get out a request for proposals from private entities to see what kind of participation we could get in this particular project. We developed a schematic kind of perspective drawing of what the kind of seawall boardwalk area might look like. We have the one-way parking, angled parking. We would like to separate the bike path from the walking, but depending on budget and a few other factors, it'll kind of depend on to what extent of design we go into with this. There might be vegetation that separates those. It might just be more of a hardscape with a different paved treatment. So once we get into hard design, engineering, and we start, and Ron tells me I need to hit a budget number, we start trying to mold and craft the engineering plan to make sure we value engineer it to make sure we don't go over budget. If we collectively look at the entire plan, and I hope that everyone's had a chance to look at the entire concept plan in Ron's office, we see that the boardwalk ties into the beach area. There are a couple concepts that we came up with for the beach area. One of those involves a slip road that maintains some parking. The primary concept here is that there will be no parking in front of the beach. This is a drastic change from where things are right now. So, from a design perspective, we clearly have to mitigate that issue and come up with parking. So I want to unveil a little bit of that to you. But from a design perspective, what we're trying to do is create a lot of capacity for visitors and trying to activate your sidewalks, okay? So that's the design idea here around the overarching design. So I'll walk through these kind of individually. The beach area, again, we've looked at the expanded kind of boardwalk and plaza. We, again, have another private-public partnership, right? You all control, probably 3 or 4 key locations, 3 of which are within the study area, but 2 of them I really want to highlight. One of those is the marina, and the other one is the opportunity for another type of restaurant feature that really takes advantage of the views, the boardwalk, and so forth. We love this idea of anchoring the beach and the boardwalk on either side. The town is reaping benefits of increased pedestrian activity, and you're tapping into this kind of public-private partnership that's going to help, we hope, to help make these investments. Again, the bike path would kind of continue on all the way to Pool Creek Park. We see an opportunity for a rejuvenated water park. We've thrown out a number of ideas here. We'd like to see possibly a tower that goes up. You could then get onto a new water slide, or you could get onto a zip line that would land you into the actual lake itself and onto near a platform. There's also an opportunity to do some type of climbing tower as well. And you see here I've added kind of this expanded area. Could we possibly expand that deck and on the dry side of the tower actually put in a climbing tower? So we want as many activities as possible. We want to keep people here as long as possible and give them, again, as many activities as we can afford to put in place. There's a number of zip lines like this that go into lakes. If anyone's been to the Lake Eden Arts Festival in Black Mountain, a great example there. That thing goes for 3 or 4 days straight with kids on that zip line at that particular festival. It's also an opportunity out in the lake to possibly do some type of it's almost like American Ninja Warrior, but on the lake. It's these flotation devices. Again, another activity that we want to recommend. Is it possible, as I mentioned, to go up one side of the tower and do some type of rock climbing activity with beautiful views to kind of introduce that activity to maybe some people that aren't accustomed to it at all. The town center itself, I want to highlight a few things here. As I mentioned, this entire plan, just like the current plan that you all have, is predicated on a DOT project. This one is predicated on the exact opposite. What would it look like for Memorial Highway, Highway 64, to stay exactly where it is? What would it look like for you all to phase this plan in over time? Just while we've been doing this plan, Chimney Rock State Park's acquired property. You guys have done Morse Park. Things are changing here in this community so rapidly. We provide you with the alternative, but we also think that you can phase things in over time as well and remain somewhat flexible. We have a very organized entry-exit. We've organized the parking. We keep the green essentially where it is, but expand it quite a bit. Ron and I were out there a couple days ago, and cars, it's not even busy, and cars are coming in the wrong side and out the wrong side. So just trying to orient the visitor very clearly. We want to create some type of block system that in the near term could potentially serve as parking, and over time, with private investment, create infill and new development. Again, with this particular design, there's no beachside parking instead of this large plaza and so forth. If in the plans that I've submitted to Ron and on the big board, if you've seen that in his office, you do see we did create the alternative if you guys did want to keep some level parking in front of the beach. This does bring up the question of the Veterans Memorial that kind of sits right in the middle of this area. Our feeling is we've created this perspective drawing from the arcade looking back at what could potentially be a new building at the beach. We think this area could serve as a great area to do some type of new Veterans Memorial that is easier to get to, that people can observe, and isn't quite isolated on an island. So I just wanted to mention that. We didn't just skip over that particular piece, but recognize that's important and think this is an opportunity to do something bigger, better, and that people can see and touch and feel. If we reorient the town center plan, I just want to show you all from a perspective from an existing aerial of what we're talking about, because it is a significant change. And I want us all to be aware of that. The road entry into the town center plan would essentially go right through the first little green area there and move into the center of the Veterans Memorial. That's kind of that center road. And if you look at the nature of the plan itself, we're trying to establish blocks, we're trying to establish on-street parking, we're trying to establish a streetscape, and that particular alignment creates what we call the 100% intersection. We want to get right there to that center point, and that's kind of like the hub of activity. To kind of discuss a little bit of implementation, where the star is here is an opportunity for a public-private partnership to redevelop this area. We think that this entire beachside boardwalk can be built in the $800 to probably $1.5 million range, depending if you want to do some of the beach amenities and so forth. We pull in a private partner, and that number could go down. If we were to get rid of the parking there along the beach, we're recommending that in the near term, these two other blocks could become temporary parking. One of them controlled by a private landowner, one of them being controlled primarily by the town of Lake Lure, where your current public works is. So from a strategy standpoint, from an implementation standpoint, these are things that can kind of be done simultaneously here. Want to introduce kind of a new term in planning that's come about. It's called tactical implementation or tactical urbanism. This is where you do something really short term that you can kind of test out your ideas. So it's experiential intervention, planning by doing. It's like a do-it-yourself type of planning. Here in front of the beach area is a possible opportunity to do that. What would it look like for the community to take over that space for a day or a week? Or maybe it's maybe it's on the fringe of the season and it's not so busy. Or maybe it's a festival or event that you guys are carrying on. So from a tactical implementation standpoint, you would, kind of take over that area, put up, you could do planters, do other amenities, canopies, and so forth. And we see some examples here of how that's done in different urban areas and urban environments, just to kind of test out how is this going to work. If you were to do that, I would still like to see some type of additional parking be created in the back blocks. When we met with the steering committee stakeholder group last, we presented a phasing alternative. We're now calling that a phasing alternative A, and this might not be in this might be in your current slide packet there, but it is, okay, good. The initial phasing schedule that we outlined was 1A being the marina and boardwalk itself. We could see that as high priority. not only from the potential income that could come in, the public-private partnership, but we also have kind of a safety issue with the boardwalk itself. So that's very high in our minds. 1B we noted as the town green, just the green area. You could possibly retrofit that area for a reasonable budget. If you start getting into streetscape enhancements and redoing parking, you're looking at a more significant budget. Phase 2, we thought maybe the beach area. Then 3 would be Pool Creek Park, and then 4 being more of the town center plan itself. I want to submit to you all a different idea for phasing here. 1 remains as the marina and boardwalk. And then looking at 2A, 2B, actually, both of the parking areas there should be labeled 2A. So those are, 2A would be, can we work with private landowners to create temporary parking? Can we work to find alternate location for the public works and create 2 overflow kind of parking areas that are kind of temporary? And then that opens up 2B. That opens up the whole boardwalk area. You've now mitigated for that loss of parking. And we've now pushed all of that up. So this is another alternative for us to think through implementation. Pool Creek Park itself is kind of ready whenever the community is, right? I mean, you all have some factors coming in with the new ABC store, but it's in a good place right now. But I feel like from a budgetary standpoint, it's just a matter of time before that opportunity comes about. What I like about 2B here is you engage in another private-public partnership. So that's what I want to kind of submit to you all, something to think about, and would love to hear from you all tonight concerning that as we work to prepare the final report. So a few implementation goals I would throw out for us to discuss is, I've highlighted 4 of those. The first one is the marina and boardwalk design. Developing the shovel-ready kind of engineering documents associated with that. Solicit a private partner, so submitting a request for proposals to someone to participate in the marina restaurant project. 3, explore parking alternatives. This meaning the public works area and private partners. And then the beach boardwalk. Is there some type of tactical implementation experiment you all could do there that combines with a current festival event or something along those lines to see how that feels and how the community likes something along those lines? So those are 4 quick implementation goals that I see just for this year that would move the project along. With that, I'll answer any questions you all might have.
Eric, I think one of the things I'd just like you to quickly go over, one of your slides had a star at the Chimney Rock Park entrance. Would you just quickly go over that area and explain some thinking behind that? The gateway concept.
Yes, so where the star is, we envision, and it's noted on the more elaborate plan, as a gateway entrance to the park itself. Now, this is not to be where tickets and things along those lines would be bought and sold. People would go right through the heart of town and way up before they would ever see anyone related to the park. But the actual gateway entrance is in this particular location. Now, from a transportation standpoint, we got into our minds something like this. Right now, currently in Chimney Rock Village, you have both the ingress and egress for the park, right? People are taking left turns, people are taking right turns to get into the park, and it's both levels of traffic. Here we're dealing with just what, according to their master plan, would just be the ingress, so just the people coming into the park. So you would still have people taking a left turn motion, but as soon as they come into your town center, they're taking a right-hand turn and they're pushing right up into the park, which that entire road I could see as a queue, like holding cars that are getting into the park itself. But that would be probably 1.5 miles or so up the way. But it's one of the design challenges, right? And that's why your original town center plan called for the network that it did. But we're trying to create 2 ingress egress points onto Memorial Highway. We show different types of on-street parking and different alternatives. We show angled parking. We show parallel parking. You could also have no parking just to create less conflict and so forth. So all of those are options and alternatives as we move through the process.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments for Eric while he's here?
Well, the only comment I've made on these parking areas in the long term, and I'm talking years out, parking's always an issue. If you take these parking areas, you could actually build, like they do a lot of beach communities, build a parking deck inside the building and kind of wrap it on 3 sides and have double use on these Ps to actually have additional retail areas and that kind of area to still maintain parking. You can have parking deck inside that. Some of them are 2-story, that kind of thing. So I think when you have the Ps here, parking is always going to be our issue. And then you want retail to support that.
Right.
So my consideration would be to put your parking in the future inside the interior of the building, using the exterior for retail.
Yeah, it's great. And if you look at this concept here, where we show these parking areas, it's almost like a near-term solution, right? As you're trying to evolve to what you're saying. So I would say before we get to the parking deck, the next evolution is more of like the actual plan itself, where we've got infill development that occurs, and we've rebuilt our streets to where they have on-street parking. So phase 1 would be relocate public works, work with a private partner, and kind of like have this temporary anchored, almost like little parking lots that are back there. As you evolve your town center plan, create streets with on-street parking, and then promote infill development, you've kind of mitigated that. Now, if the market can stand it, or, you know, from a financial standpoint, you could pull it off, that's the ideal scenario, is that everything goes vertical. We have a really dense core. The bottom left parking area, we would like to see that mostly residential. Want to see possibly 50 units or so go into the core here, just to keep the town center activated as often as possible. Now, that can be on the 2nd, 3rd floor, and if there's enough retail capacity, it can happen. From a design standpoint, we're less concerned about the use and more concerned about the form. What does it look like? Does it adhere to kind of a town center and urban form?
Was there, or what consideration did you give to the ability of the one road we've got coming in and out to handle traffic in the case this vision was completely built out? Will it handle the traffic?
So in terms of a technical transportation study, we've done 2 things. One is reached out to DOT, who said they're not going to do a transportation study for us. And then we reached out to a private transportation firm that has a good reputation, based out of Raleigh, and to come here and start doing traffic counts this summer and do something that would be certified for DOT, they wanted around $30,000 to do that study. So I think that's the only way we're going to answer from a transportation standpoint. But I will say this. There is no DOT transportation model that would ever pass in any downtown. I mean, if you just think of the place that you like to go the most, a downtown environment, you know, there's conflict between cars on on-street parking. There's different blocks. I don't know that you would ever have a chance of passing a DOT study with this type of network. Their model doesn't compute something like this. Okay? So just like Chimney Rock Village, would the DOT model fail? Of course it would. Is it bad? I don't know. It's debatable, right? I mean, if you're a visitor, once you're in Chimney Rock Village, even if you're in traffic, you're there. You're at the destination. You're at the place. So you ask a great question, and it's one that it's going to take dollars and resources for us to go out here and actually analyze.
The reason I ask is,
Yep.
Chimney Rock Village is tight
Yep.
right now, and it's just something that we would need to know
Yep.
for sure.
Well, DOT actually did a layout for their long-term planning with a cul-de-sac as you cross the stream
Right.
and dividing it, and that's not shown here, but they've actually shown a cul-de-sac right at the bridge and then going left and around.
That's correct. That's in the original town center plan. So you're looking at maybe a $14 to $20 million DOT project to get you started
Right.
before you could ever do anything, right? So that's why this is a complete alternative to that concept.
The reason we came up with that concept to begin with was to get out in front of DOT. We
Yep.
had information that they were looking at putting another entrance into Chimney Rock Park, and we wanted it to be, we knew that if we were going to have input on it, we had to get out front and have our design before they had their design, so that
Yep.
we would most likely use ours. And so that was the reason for doing that study and coming up with that design to begin with.
Yeah. And it has a lot of great merit.
So then, in terms of the original town center plan and the DOT bypass road network, I call it that,
Yeah.
that was originally proposed, we had come to a conclusion after trying to get the DOT to commit some level of timing or whatever, they wouldn't. We just simply concluded that project is unlikely to happen in our lifetime, if ever, right? Now, it appears, though we don't have any definitive answer from the DOT or the park, really, that they have been doing some right-of-way work in and around where we're showing that star and the property that they purchased for the from that subdivision
Right.
above the Reegular Inn, and it appears, at least to us, that that plan creates a corridor, which is going back to this original dual entry exit concept for the park that they still think is important, to create that entrance at that point, but not the remainder of all that bypass road network, I think is, and that's kind of the way we're viewing the future of the road access there. I think what some of us on the council who have even in recent experience and anecdotally from having large festivals, we have several of them in season.
Yeah.
We've experienced some really severe traffic backups, not just healthy, slow-moving congestion through a commercial district, but literally backups that, some people say took them 45 minutes to an hour to get from 9 into downtown. And we think part of that was because of the parking situation that exists in front of our beach. Creates just a horrendous traffic congestion issue, people backing in and out and waiting for parking spaces. And then secondarily, those occurred without any positive traffic regulation or management, by the Reegular Police or anyone else. And it seems like when we've done that, and we've done that now with several large events, that really has a major impact on alleviating the congestion problem. So I don't know how that plays out for some future master plan there, but there are things that we could do, I think, to address potential undesirable congestion along our two-lane road through the gorge, right?
And partly why we worked on this second phasing alternative was, if you look at phase 1, obviously high need, but if you look at 2A and 2B, these are all things that kind of tie in to this plan or your other town center plan, and almost kind of buys you time, because these are all things that are going to be improved, that can be tied into either plan. And depending on what DOT wants to do, depending on if you can get a commitment from them or not. You know, do you want to go ahead and invest in the town green right now? Maybe. If maybe you could do more of a scaled back kind of town green area there and kind of just direct traffic in a more clear and manageable way. That's really what that town green would do, right? But in terms of major infrastructure investments here, 2B, it doesn't matter, you know, which plan you're looking at as well.
Well, I like starting with 1, and my main reason for
Yeah.
liking that is because it contains several significant revenue-generating assets that would, I assume, pay for that particular project, if we define that as a project. And whereas some of the other ones, you know, like parking lots, we could charge for parking, and like Chimney Rock Village, and that could generate revenue, but I don't think to the scale that that the expanded marina with 90 additional slips.
Right.
and a rentable, highly desirable space in the marina for the restaurant and those other facilities. I think that if it's done right, I think it would certainly pay back on whatever debt service is involved.
Yeah, without a doubt, and I mean, experience has shown us that on the marina. So it would definitely pay for itself, adding those 90 additional slips. And we currently pay our debt every year plus what, 65?
Yeah.
65
40,
extra?
yeah.
Thousand, over and above, so. So it would definitely pay for itself on the marina aspect of it.
Okay.
And
Any other questions?
I was just going to say, Eric, for the board's knowledge, sort of next steps is how this fits into the larger tourism plan. I know you're going to be looking for some direction from us as a final direction to put in your plan. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I mean, I any direction that you or council could provide would be great. Our next step is obviously to finish our road show across the county, as we've developed very specific plans related to other areas. But our goal and objective is to formulate some type of draft document that can be reviewed late next month, late June.
Right.
And from there, we can go back and forth to kind of tweak, manage. If we need to do a special workshop, I'd be glad to do that, whatever it takes.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming here tonight.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Eric. Nice job.
Thank you.
Really have done a nice job on that.
I might add, now we have our budget presentation tonight, and we haven't approved it, of course, but our CIP, we did, I think, as our number 2 priority, allocate for the engineering and so on for the phase 1 aspect.
That's great.
For the concourse, the marina concourse and the marina expansion stuff, so.
That's great.
And so for the audience too, that includes moving all those electric lines underground. So,
Yeah. It's going to be a great project. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Eric.
it.
Appreciate that very much. Okay, Ron, that brings us to what was planned to be the second presentation, which was on the 2018-19 budget. Now, you want to report the status on that?
Sure. As you know, I've been working hard over the last couple of weeks putting together a budget. There are a lot of moving parts in this budget. It's one, as you know, we have a lot of big projects. And so what I'm going to request is that you set a special meeting next week. Let me wrap up a couple of loose ends and make that presentation then. That it still allows you well over a month for any additional meetings. We also will ask that you set the public hearing in keeping with your budget calendar. But again, I'd just like permission to go ahead and do that presentation early next week if we can.
Well, I think maybe we're going to do the setting of the public hearing later on the agenda.
That's
But in
correct.
terms of the special meeting, is that something, when are you going to be, when are you prepared to? say you'll be ready next week?
I will have the final draft finished by Friday, so.
This week.
This week, yeah, so anytime after that, if that would be okay with y'all.
I'm available anytime, the 16th, 17th, or 18th.
16,
6
17.
a.m.? Oh. John said, nope.
No, I can't.
6
The
a.m.
only time in there that of what you mentioned, Stephen, that I could not, is I have to, I could not meet after 5 p.m. on the 17th. I've got something else that evening.
Nor could I.
I'm out of town 17th and 18th.
Okay,
That
so
looks
that
like
leaves-
16th.
16th?
I'm good.
15's too early?
Huh?
Is the 15th too early, Ron?
Well, Stephen,
Or
are you not
Stephen.
here?
Yeah.
Well, the 15th, the only thing on the 15th is the zoning and planning board, and John's tied up for that as the liaison, so it'd have to be after that.
I think we could, I could get somebody to take notes for me if we, the budget would take precedence over that. If that was a time when it worked for everybody else, I
Yeah.
think we can work
Yeah, I
around
mean,
that.
I'm available 15th.
Does that give you enough time,
Yes, sir.
the 15th? There's an ABC board meeting at 2, that just involves me. We got zoning and planning at 9:30, 10:30.
Could we schedule that at 5 o'clock? So, because that is a public forum, right?
That's fine with me. 15th at 5 o'clock.
I have a commitment at that
You do?
evening.
Do the 16th. at
16?
5.
It's gotta be, it's public hearing, right? It's gotta be.
No, this is not your public
No,
hearing.
it's
This,
not a
this is
public
just the
hearing.
initial
What about early
presentation.
on the 15th?
This is more of a workshop.
This
Right, just
initial presentation. That's
What
right.
about the morning of the 15th?
That's fine with me.
I can do it, yeah.
What, 9 o'clock?
You do have the planning and zoning board that will meet here, is that right? Do I have that right? 9:30, the 15th? Shannon?
Yeah, they meet here at 9:30, or scheduled to meet here at 9:30 on the 15th. Notice Tom was here earlier there. They really could, hardly anybody comes to those meetings if they didn't have anybody that was, if they didn't have a large group coming, they could almost meet in the conference room. They met one year over at Dean's office. There was something going on here. I don't remember what it was, but there was for some reason couldn't meet here, and they met over at the conference room in the lake at the house near the dam. Yeah.
Or you could just go across the street to the Gateway Center. No one ever uses that conference room there. I'm
Then
sure
you
we
have
could
to-
make
then you
it.
have to- If you move it at all, you have to change it to a special meeting.
Yeah. So we could re-advertise. So 9 o'clock
9 o'clock on.
15th.
on the
15th.
15th.
Okay.
That's fine with me.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, Ron, thank you. All right, that brings us to item number 7, which is,
Can I,
yes.
Ron, I saw Donnie go through,
He must have thought our meeting was at 6, so, because
he kept going. Thank you.
Why do you stop him?
All right, that brings us to the council liaison reports and comments. So would anybody like to volunteer to go first?
Sure. I'll go ahead since the Utilities Board is now meeting every other month. So therefore, the next meeting will be on June 5th at 2 p.m. And they just didn't feel they needed to meet every month. So that's been their new schedule. So they did not meet this month.
Okay. John?
Which one you want me to do? I'll start with the LAB first. We met yesterday for about 2 hours and 15 minutes. Topics we discussed is priority policy for boat slip rentals, and we're getting a final decision made on that. We had an interesting request from Rumbling Ball Resort in regards to a boat club being something they're thinking about. But we asked for more information from them on that before we really got into too much discussion about it. We did approve one commercial boat license for Jim and Katie Robinson, who are property owners here that have, they actually had a commercial license last year, misunderstood the process and thought that all they had to do is to pay their fee each year after that. And so we granted them a permit for that. We actually took some away from less than 10 mile an hour in the model to achieve that. We had another request for a commercial boat license from someone who lived out of town, someone who was not a town resident, someone who was not a town property owner, for a commercial boat license, and we denied that boat license. Had a request from Reegular Tours to put up no fishing signs over at the rental docks. We've got people that are going out there fishing and getting their hooks hung in people's covers on their boats and on their tops. So we'll be putting up no fishing signs, allowing no fishing on the where the slips are. Dean is going to be conducting a commercial boater safety class. That'll be advertised when that starts. We had great fishing report from Gary Housenfuss, and I've not personally got to be able to verify that yet, but I have a lot of guys come by my house. I'm outside. I ask them how they're doing. We did have Gary Housenfuss come by the operations center last week, and Dean and I were there, and I think probably he was if we'd had the game warden there, they could probably have taken him away. I think he had too many fish in his live well, but then I found out he catches them, takes them up, and turns them loose at his boathouse. So I guess they weren't off the lake yet, they were still on the lake, so I guess that's okay. One thing, and this does not fall under my full responsibility, but it does involve specifically the lake. And I see we've got Dustin, our assistant fire chief, here, and I want to just mention this. So if you are in a conversation with someone somewhere, you can clarify a rumor that's been going around. As you know, we had a house fire a week ago this past Sunday, and we had the fireboat there. And the gentleman that was operating that fireboat sitting in the audience with us tonight. And there was a lot of people out in the middle of the lake watching the operation of the fire. And I'll tell you, the firemen did an incredible job. It's just down past the former mayor's house. It's tight in and out. There were 6 fire departments, I think, that responded. Dustin, is that right? Plus the fireboat, and at one point the fireboat appeared not to be doing anything. Well, let us reassure you that the fireboat was pumping water up the hill to the trucks that were there to fight the fire. So we had people who said, well, why is the fireboat just sitting over there tied up to shore not doing anything? Well, let me promise you. How many gallons it will pump, Dustin?
We run it for about 6 hours at 1,000 gallons a minute.
1,000 gallons a minute for 6 hours. So that's the benefit of our fireboat and our fire department to have that for our benefit. And for me, I'll tell you, I had the house insured. And you know, it's a benefit to know that we've got that kind of protection, because they did save the main part of the house. There's damage. It was a 2-story house, and behind there was a guest house. And the guest house where the fire started was totally destroyed. There's some damage to and I say some, it's significant, but it's going to be able to be repaired. So kudos to our fire department and all the fire departments for their work and what they did. And if someone says the fireboat wasn't doing anything, now you know what the fireboat was really doing. Pumping 1,000 gallons a minute for 6 hours. And so that was pretty significant. So anybody got questions on anything from the LAB? If not, I'll move out of that to a subject I know more about, the ABC store. And I promised you a little better report for the ABC store than what I've been doing. I actually stopped by today and Woody printed me off our profit and loss statement for April. We have our ABC board meeting next Wednesday for last month. So I don't know if you have any idea what our sales run and stuff like that, but the total sales for April in our store was $68,069.79. So that's was a pretty good month. Our it's the ABC store is a profit center for the town, because every bit of profit that the ABC store makes comes back into the town coffers. Doesn't go to the state. Now, of course, I guess the state makes whenever that's who we purchase the product from. So it's very cyclable, like everything else in our town. It's tourist season, and you'll see as I give these reports each month about what the amount of sales is when it gets into the tourist season and everything. The sales really go up and they really fall off, and we have 5 people on staff at the ABC store, which they're not required, but we try to make sure there's at least 2 people there all the time every day. And we have Woody's cut back to part-time. Woody is the manager, and so we are progressing with the new strip mall that up the street. We're working on that plan. Shannon is working very hard on that plan. We take 2 steps forward and 1 back, or maybe 1.5 back with stuff that we're finding, but that is progressing well also. That's my report.
Thanks, John.
Okay. The Zoning and Planning Board met on Tuesday, April 17th at 9:30. The biggest subject of conversation is what we're having our public hearing on tonight, the ordinance amending the soil erosion and sedimentation regulations, and so I won't go over what Shannon will be presenting in more detail later on. The other thing we worked on was our list of projects for the rest of this fiscal year, and then for next year for the 17-18 work plan. Our list of projects is sedimentation and erosion control, which was actually what we just completed, and the permitted use in commercial districts, communication tower amendments to accommodate the latest technology, and lighting on commercial projects when the preliminary work has been done on that. For the 18-19 fiscal year, we're looking at a general cleanup of some of our regulations and ordinances. So a lot of this was requested by Commissioner Weber, and so we'll be looking at ways we can make it really is no material changes, but just cleaning up where there may be some little contradictions, or things could be more clearly stated. And then let's see, we're looking at parking provisions. We'll have to review the sewer ordinance, depending on on whatever ordinance we pass as a council. Then the zoning board will need to do their work on that as well after the council does theirs. We're looking at ways to embrace e-business, ways to improve permit application process and to make it more have a better coordination between all the different town departments with the permit application. change the designation certificate of zoning compliance to zoning permit and certificate of occupancy to certificate of compliance. That sounds complicated, and it's really not. It's just changing some terminology because it was conflicting with some county terminology, and it would just, for the people who are getting their permits, it'll make them easier for them to distinguish between what the town is requiring and when they're done with, when they've met the town requirements and when they've met the county requirements. Looking at subdivision plat revision process and subdivision standards process, and that's it.
Thank you. Commissioner, any questions?
Asset management, anything on that?
Didn't have a meeting.
Oh, they didn't, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner what?
The Board of Adjustment and Lake Structure Appeals Board did not meet. There were no cases. However, there are currently 303 vacation rentals that are active to date. The Parks and Recreation Board met on May the 3rd, and one of the primary topics was, of course, the grand opening of the Buffalo Creek Park and Weed Patch Mountain, which the mayor covered earlier. But that was a great turnout, and Clint Calhoun came out and operated the town drone and got a lot of great pictures that he's going to be passing to Valerie to put whatever you can on the website accordingly. That's now a complete 12 miles of trail, Buffalo Creek Park and Weed Patch Mountain all the way up to Eagle Rock, like the mayor said. Another large topic, geese mitigation. It comes around every year. Everybody loves the geese. If you noticed over the years, the goose population has dwindled significantly. This year, or last year, we had 84 eggs that were found and oiled, and that was in 14 nests. This year, we've only had 50 eggs that were found and oiled, and also in 14 nests. I'd like to say a big thanks to Ed Dittmer and Larry Tchaikovsky and Dave Lust for going out and oiling those. They use vegetable oil. It's a very humane way to take care of that problem, and it is working. So those are the two key things to report out of the, well, the other thing is Morse Park. We've run into our first major stumbling block with regard to the restroom, and that is the bids. Out of all the bids solicited, we got one back, and that's quite a bit more than what was allocated in the budget. So we're working on that issue to try to overcome that stumbling block. But right now, that project is at a standstill until we can make something happen there. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Okay. All right. Well, thanks to all the commissioners, and that moves us into item 8 on our agenda, which is public comment. Ron, can you perhaps check the comment list there for me, or nobody? Okay. Okay. Well, I'll make a last call. If anybody would like to make a public comment, you're welcome to do it at this time. If not, we appreciate that, and we'll move along in our meeting. It saves us a little bit of time. That brings us then to item 9, which is the consent agenda. And commissioners have all, in their packets, received several items. There's 5 of them being covered in the consent agenda. So if you'd like to entertain a motion to adopt that?
I make a motion to adopt the consent agenda, and for the benefit of the audience, and along with that, last week we had a special meeting to discuss Spruce Hill Road and I forgot the
Golf carts.
The what?
Golf carts.
The golf cart ordinance. The golf cart ordinance has been suspended until July the 10th for some review and modification. The Spruce Hill project, the Spruce Hill Road project has been approved for an amount of up to $10,000 to eliminate that public nuisance and safety hazard and to help prevent that drainage of sediment into the lake. That's one of the things on our consent agenda, so I wanted to mention that to everybody. But I make the motion to approve the consent agenda as established.
Commissioner Weber makes the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Cameron seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thanks. Okay, that brings us to item 10, which is unfinished business. We have 2 items of unfinished business. The first one being the lake dredging project, the bid results. And Dean, are you going to give us a report on that?
Okay, just a quick rundown on March 28th. We had a contractor bid workshop. The contractors, we had approximately 12 companies represented. They all received a RFP package. The deadline was set for April 17th. During that meeting, we found that contractors could not meet that deadline and they asked for more time. We went to April 27th. April 27th, we received 3 bids from the 12, from 3 of the contractors out of the 12 bid on the project. We sent those bids to the town engineer, Brown Engineering, and they determined that the bids were unbalanced and not complete. So the recommendation from Brown Engineering is to allow those 3 bidders to fix their bid and balance the bid, and then receive them back within 2 weeks, and then bring it back before council here for recommendation.
Was their term really to fix the bids?
Pardon me?
Was the term that Brown used really to fix the bids?
No, there's just, I think that you guys have probably seen them or seen something on it, and it's just basically some of the numbers up front, wanting what they want up front is just not something that you normally pay to have done. I mean, their overall bids looked good, but just what they, mainly was what was being asked for up front to get here and start work. We were, Brown felt like we're giving them way too much money just to get here.
Mobilization.
Yes.
Dean, it might be just a comment for the folks that are here, that and you may know it, all our bidding process is strictly regulated by the legislature for our town. So it's not like we do it any different than anybody else, or that we can do it any different than anybody else. It's all regulated. When these unbalanced bids, that's part of that process.
Yes, sir.
And if you have that situation where you have bidders and they're often determined to be unbalanced, then you have to send it back for new bids.
Right. And that's why we weren't opening it up to anybody else, just the 3 who submitted in the first place.
The fact that, how many did you say we had at the pre-bid?
There's a list on here. There was a lot of people, but there was more than one person at
Right.
with a company, but we ended up having 12 different companies.
Okay, so we did get 3 bids, and I think that's great. You know, that's a competitive number. But I just wonder, who would not want to dredge our beautiful lake?
The people that don't want to get rid of your sediment after they dredge.
Is that what? Well, that was the gist of my question. Is did we hear anything from any of the folks that didn't bid? Was there something about our solicitation that was objectionable, or I don't know? Is there reasons why the others didn't bid?
The reason why is most dredging companies, had we have said we'll get rid of the material after they dredge it, I believe every one of them would have bid. But they don't. Most dredging companies, they want to come in and dredge it out of your lake or your pond, and then they want to leave. And then we're stuck with getting it out. And over the years of me being in the dredging here, we've always had a problem getting the material out of town. So we decided that, hey, let's get a contractor in here and let's make him get rid of it. So we knew the prices would go up, but if we could tie the 2 together, then we get somebody who's more likely going to get it out. And most of the contractors that didn't bid, it was just mainly because they they don't want to come here and spend time getting rid of the material for us.
One more question, and I'll be done. So my understanding is that our position is, I mean, we have budgeted $300,000 a year.
Yes, sir.
And I think the objective with that budget was to remove approximately 30,000 cubic yards a year.
Yes, sir.
That number corresponds to the estimated amount of sediment being deposited on average in the lake a year. So at that rate, we would simply be keeping up with. Maintaining, okay.
Right.
And that all, those numbers all work. Obviously, you don't have to be a mathematician. They're predicated on a $10 per cubic yard unit rate for doing all the things you just said, getting rid of. Okay, let's, just for this, if we were to receive back bids, which would exceed the $10 amount, such that we have a budget of $300,000, we wouldn't then be able to remove 30,000 yards a year. And if that were the case, we wouldn't be keeping up with the amount of deposition. So I say all that because at some point, I think our council needs to decide on what our objective or what our policy will be as it relates to that situation if it arises. And there's a possibility it could.
Yes, sir.
And just not that we would necessarily have to cross that bridge tonight, but I think in the very near future that issue may come before us, and it's a difficult. It'll be I think somewhat of a difficult decision given the tight budget that Ron is going to deliver, and other priorities. But at the same time, we need to do something to prevent our lake from filling up with silt.
Well, we're sitting on what used to be lake. And eventually our grandkids might be holding a meeting, 300 yards down the way, sitting on the lake if we don't stay on top
They'll
of
be
it.
out in front of Firefly Cove.
Yeah, or your house, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's a serious.
I just say all that because I see a serious policy decision coming up in our near future, and it's something we should be thinking about before.
Have we considered split beds? One doing the dredging and one hauling?
We've done that in the past, and we've had companies come in to get rid of the sediment. They're the ones that always leave us hanging. They either go out of business or leave town, or it's always been a problem. So with the last bidding cycle was the first cycle that we tied the two projects together and asked one contractor to be in charge of all of it. And I mean, we can always go out and say, how much will you charge to bid, but you're still going to be paying the back end by getting somebody else to get rid of this material. And the sad thing is if we were in Charlotte, we'd be making money hand over fist from the material coming out.
To deliver the material to people that need it.
Right.
Yep.
But where we're at in Lake Lure, you just can't get it out of town for trucking cost and fuel costs and everything.
Thank you, Dean.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
You need a motion, right? Here, the recommended motion to accept the recommendation from Brown Engineering and reject all bids for the lake dredging project and authorize staff to revise the bid document and request resubmission from the three current bidders.
Yep. You want to make that motion?
I did.
You did. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Kilby. Any further discussion on this? All right, then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. Appreciate that. Okay, that brings us to the second item of unfinished business, and this deals with a professional service agreement for the new ABC store. Shannon, you're going to lead us through that.
I'll do the best I can, Mr. Mayor. Just would like to set a little bit of context. On the site where the commercial center is, we made some discoveries about live water. Town council asked us in the resolution to basically try to resolve all the water drainage issues. What we found was that there's a 30-inch culvert that punches through the retaining wall that is parallel to 6474. And it carries live water, which means there is a spring somewhere on that site somewhere. Certainly, if we could follow the culvert, it would tell us where the spring is. The culvert goes back 4 feet. Right now, we believe it takes a 45-degree angle, goes back another 20 feet. It then hits a head wall with another culvert in it. That culvert, the second one, is 80-90% full, and so we cannot get a camera up into that second culvert. I did find out that that area, which included Dr. Birch's office, used to be the football field for the old school. And so there were culverts in there placed over the years, and I'm sure once that property was purchased, it was no longer a football field. Instead of replacing the culvert, they just added a little bit on, so then they could pour that retaining wall. They backfilled so they could create parking. They had a building spot, so that gave them a building pad. I also learned that across Harris Road on the other side, where it climbs to the top of the hill there, opposite of the driveway that goes into where the temporary units were for the school, there is a culvert under the road. At one point in time, that culvert was functional, and found out last week from Chuck Amaker that it is no longer functional. When it rains, the water rolls into that ditch and then it rolls over the road. So they've tried to send a snake in that culvert, and that culvert, they're hitting something solid in that culvert once it gets under the road. Chuck tells me he believes all that is tied together in some way, somehow. He just doesn't know how. If that's the case, then it certainly is crossing a portion of Dr. Birch's office property. And somehow it ties into that 30-inch culvert down there close to where the commercial building is. The storm drains, the piping that was put in to carry the storm water from the roof of that building, there seems to be some wet areas in the pavement in the front of the building. We don't know exactly how that works, but we do know based on what the pavers told David Airwood is that they believe a full depth replacement of that parking lot is going to be necessary. That means all the pavement's got to come out. They're going to have to bring in new stone where they believe it needs to be brought in. They need to make sure that it's not pumping, meaning there's sections that are not, water's not coming up through. Bottom line is there are some water issues with that property that we have to resolve, and you guys made that clear in your resolution that you wanted those issues resolved. So we asked David Odom Engineering, to come out. He walked the property with the mayor and I. We talked about the issues as best we could based on the knowledge we had at that time, and we asked him to send us a proposal. We also talked about the need for access to that site with sidewalks. The sidewalks in the Memorial Highway side of the property are going to have to be pushed right up against the retaining wall. The room's not there to have a ditch and a sidewalk, so we're going to have to find a way to put a sidewalk over top of some culvert. You're going to have to move storm water through that ditch underneath those sidewalks in some manner, or you push out in the street and you do curb and guttering. But we've got to figure out how that's supposed to be done. On the Harris Road side, it's a similar situation. We have much less room there. Again, we have a ditch running against the retaining wall, and we're going to have to find a way to put the sidewalk in and also allow for storm water to continue in its path, either through curb and guttering or perhaps extending a culvert under the sidewalk. We'll have to figure that out. But that's why we have Dave Odom trying to help us. So you've got one proposal, but in that proposal there are two sections. There's an A and a B. The $8,500 is to document where the lines are, the culverts are currently on that property, and then create a plan that addresses the live water, any water that's coming on the property from Harris Road, and then also to carry the storm water off the roof of that building to make sure it gets in the appropriate place. The $4,000 on top of the 85 is to do the design for the sidewalk sections, both Memorial Highway and up Harris Road. So that's the context, and that's what the proposal is supposed to do. Phase 1 is to review all the prior reports and surveys, provide GPR in strategic locations. Maybe that's may or may not be necessary to find some of the existing metal culverts that are under the ground. And basically you can read the rest of it. Recommend piping improvements and upgrades for stormwater subsurface flow. Develop plan specifications for stormwater improvements, including roof drains. And then that's the 85, and then the 4,000 is basically the gutter drainage sidewalk improvements along Memorial Highway and Harris Road. Be glad to try to answer any questions as best as I can. I'm not a contractor, but I'm learning lots.
We've already had our discussion.
You got two parts there, but it's on one motion for the total dollar amount.
Right, that's what it is. It's whatever pleases the board.
So with all that water, can we now accommodate those folks that wanted to go to the ABC store by boat? Through the culvert?
Who knows? Maybe a canal deep enough to carry the boat.
Water park.
Bring them all the way up.
Yeah.
Venice.
They were worried about getting there.
All right, if there's no more comment, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the proposal for engineering services with Odom Engineering dated April 27th, 2018, in an amount not to exceed $12,500, and to authorize the town manager to execute the necessary documents.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Cameron. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Kilby. Any discussion?
Just for clarification, what Odom is going to do is simply going to tell us what needs to be done. It doesn't really fix anything.
That's right, that's
But
correct.
he will design the sidewalk part of it.
Yeah.
But the other part does not include excavation
Got it.
or any of those
Yeah.
repairs.
I think Commissioner Cameron may want to weigh on this. I think the part that I feel like we need help with most is dealing with the live water on site.
It's
Trying
pretty
to identify-
significant stream of water.
It is. And certainly, we don't believe it's under the building based on the latest information we have. That would be worst-case scenario. But that's the biggest concern.
And I think I think our approach would be if we discover that it's coming from some upslope source across the property, then the logical thing would be to just simply intercept it underground above the building. We run the drainage around the site into the ditches that already exist there that we're going to have to improve for the sidewalk, right?
That's right.
I mean, that
That's
would,
right.
it seems like that's the logical solution that we're heading for. And this GPR, which is ground penetrating radar, is just a fairly low technology approach to being able to look underground without having to dig it up, right?
And it might be able to detect the culvert.
Where the culvert is, and then our folks can literally go in there and dig it up just to confirm that, right?
And we had a previous conversation on that, and you couldn't find the head of that culvert? That hadn't been located where it's all coming from?
No, we haven't.
It could be underground.
Yeah.
And it seems like it is underground.
Yeah, we don't know if there's a box that's built around the spring head that's collecting
Yeah.
the water that brings it to the culvert, and somehow that's tied in
The
with the stormwater.
GPR should be able to find that, though. It's pretty accurate.
Well, what I think it will be helpful with this approach is when we do the sidewalks, all that's going to be integrated into one system. We're going to end up with a design that once we build it, we should take care of the live water and the storm water, have the sidewalks, have the solution for those so that as we build it, we don't do things we shouldn't be doing that interrupts the live water and the storm water.
Do you think it's possibly, I know this will sound crazy, but I'm serious, coming from the other side of the road, from that area on Night Hollow Way, under the road, and then down that hill through the Birch area?
On the opposite side of 6474?
Yeah, where the night, because right across from the Dr. Birch area is where the Night Hollow Way problem is, and that water that it's coming through there. I'm wondering if that might be a culvert under the road like it was at Spruce Hill, and going over there. I mean,
Once you get below the
just a thought.
surface, and especially if there's rock fissures involved, who knows where water goes, but I kind of doubt it, but we'll know once we start looking.
Because we have the culvert under the road with,
Going on here and what we're doing?
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a while since we've looked at this ordinance as far as making any actual changes. 2007 was the last time it was amended, and what we try to do is try to keep up with the various changes that occur in the state legislature as it applies to the Sediment Control Act, so that we keep our program current. And those changes occur pretty often, and sometimes things get taken away and then added again, and so it's kind of a juggling act as far as these changes are concerned. But we want to try to keep things as current as we can, and some of the changes that are being made as far as the major things I've bulleted out in the memo that I provided, and those just to list those. We're requesting to make changes to the square footage required for a land disturbance permit, and the amendments would actually increase the maximum allowable area requirements for a land disturbance permit from 100 square feet to 2,000 square feet. It would still require a land disturbance permit for 100 square feet or more of disturbance if the activity was taking place near a lake or natural water course, but it decreases the proximity from 50 feet to 35 feet, which matches our lakefront setback. Other changes regarding transference of permits to a new financially responsible party in the event of a foreclosure or bankruptcy. There's a requirement for self-inspection and a provision of inspection and maintenance records. And then there are changes regarding appeal of plan disapprovals or decisions of the erosion control officer to the Board of Adjustment rather than directly to council. It's also important to note that these changes, particularly as it applies to permitting, it does not mean that anyone who is disturbing land that falls below that criteria for a permit, it does not absolve them of the responsibility of installing measures. So they would still have to install silt fence, ground cover, or any other measures that might be needed to control sediment on site. But they just may not have to get a permit to do that. The Planning Board has reviewed the amendments and unanimously voted at their April 17th meeting to recommend approval. And I guess if you have any questions, I'm here to answer.
I guess my only question was, why go to the BOA instead of back to council? What was that thinking?
That language comes directly from the model ordinance. And I had this question earlier with Commissioner Weber, and it may be something that we need to further look at. Shannon and I talked briefly about it before we brought it to the board, but because it follows the language that's in the model ordinance, we didn't really think anything beyond that. But Commissioner Weber brought up a very valid point that there are certain things that by law the Board of Adjustment's allowed or can hear, and so there may be a marrying issue between the two regulations.
yeah, we've learned quite well with zoning initially, the golf cart ordinance, state models don't necessarily work as they're worded.
That's true.
All right, and what I see here on page 32 of the ordinance under the appeals portion about the Board of Adjustment, it's asking the Board of Adjustment to conduct a hearing. If someone has a plan disapproved or modified by you, and they want to appeal it, they appeal to the Board of Adjustment. The Board of Adjustment hears it, but doesn't render a decision.
Right.
And they make a recommendation to the town council.
Right.
If the town council upholds your disapproval or your modification and denies their appeal, then they appeal to the state commission.
Right.
All right? the problem with that is our Board of Adjustment is established by our zoning regulations.
Right.
Our Chapter 23 of ordinances says that Board of Adjustment is under 92.080.
Right.
And it establishes the powers and duties of the Board of Adjustment. So I think there's going to have to be, if we continue down this path, we're going to need to amend the zoning regulations to give the Board of Adjustment the power and the specifications for hearing those kinds of appeals. Because it only specifies right now the zoning and the subdivision. You know, the only two that are specified for those types of appeals.
Right.
So we would need to fix that if we continue down this path. But what it does do, it creates another layer of bureaucracy for the applicant and the citizen. They apply, they're trying to get work done, you deny their plan. Now they have to go so many days, go through an appeal process through the Board of Adjustment instead of bringing it direct to the town council, and the town council either denying their appeal, whatever. So it creates that other layer of bureaucracy, and I don't know why we're doing that other than your explanation that it's in the state model. I don't care what the state model says. I mean, we write our ordinances to suit our needs, and as long as we're within the confines of the law, it's legal. So, you know, so I'm going to recommend that we don't approve this tonight. I think we need to take this back, and between you and Shannon or you and zoning get together and marry those two up. But I would also like to see the state model personally, so, and read it myself.
I agree with Stephen on this about the added level of bureaucracy, and hopefully, Clint, we could modify this thing so they would just bring it directly to council. You know, how often is this gonna come up? You know, once every 2 or 3 or 4
as
years?
it is right now, I mean, that's really the way the process
Yeah.
works. I think the idea behind what they put in the model ordinance was to, you know, make it go before a quasi judicial board as opposed to council. But we can word it any way that you want to.
Can you check out and make sure that we
Yes.
can make those changes? And if so, you and Shannon modify this thing and bring it back?
Yes. And this has to go before the AG anyway. They have to review this and make sure that it fits with all the things that are required for the delegated program. So, yeah, we can do that.
While we're looking at that, under 96.07, under our trout buffer, the new item B on page 30, the 25-foot setback that we all deal with and love and hate, the very last of that says, shall be measured horizontally from the top of the bank. With our topo and our topography, somebody could lose 20 feet, 30 feet. You know,
Put them in the middle of
it
the
comes
highway.
comes up into a peak, you're saying top of bank is here, but they could lose 10 to 15 feet horizontally.
Yeah, it's map distance.
The way we measure that, if we're looking at it on a plan,
Right.
is particularly around the lake, we go from the top of the seawall, or if there is no seawall, we go basically whatever the high water mark is.
Okay, as
That's
long as we're the high water
that's the-
mark,
yeah.
because my concern is you get into a stream, or if these people have small lots,
On streams, we use the 1-year high water mark.
okay? Because that doesn't say that.
It
there.
doesn't say that. We've gotten guidance from that from the state as far as how do we apply that, and that's the standard that they use.
Okay, can we put that in there? Because if you get
I'm
hit
sure
by a
we
truck
could.
tomorrow, I want to make sure that other people.
But it's not ground distance, is it? It's 25 feet map distance?
It's map distance, that's right.
Not ground distance, which
Right.
could be like that, 25.
Yeah, because what you're looking at, if
Yeah.
you're going straight up, and then you're measuring horizontally along the ground.
Because that top of bank's misleading there. It's-
Yeah, it's
Oh, wow.
it's a hard measurement to
If they got
figure.
a small lot, they'll be pressing for every inch.
I'll
So-
say this though,
I know,
it
yeah.
generally doesn't cause a lot of problems
Right.
when we've dealt with this in the past. We get surveyors that come out, and if they have any questions, then I generally go out and we, kind of settle on where it is, and it's not been a problem.
In my case, that would take half my house. I mean, the 25 feet horizontally. I mean, I got it. Yeah.
So I have a question, generally in regards this particular amendment and others like this. When we go out, taking a look at a regulation like this, where an issue has been brought up, and I think maybe this issue was, I heard it being brought up in the council here, actually. What typically do you do process-wise to vet the issue? Do you invite people from the community who are engaged in this? Do you consult with them? Do you ask for their opinions? Do you do a workshop? Or, I just want to understand how we get to the point of making these changes. Are we satisfied that the people out there who are hands-on with these kinds of issues have been heard? We've considered all their issues.
As far as process, as far as the regulations are concerned, we're required to attend workshops that the state hosts, and that's where they give us updates on what the changes are to the regulations. As far as dealing with folks who are doing the work, it's a process of doing a lot of education up front, doing a lot of education during inspection processes and things like that, and that's how we try to.
Well, in this case, I think the major change in here is that we dramatically expanded the amount of area below which, a fairly standard, streamlined approval process could take place. And obviously, that's not something that the state mandates or you would get in a workshop. That seems like it has to do with arriving at a change that kind of accomplishes what the objective of the regulation is, but at the same time, it facilitates people that have to work within these regulations. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from now. Like, for instance, the 2,000 square foot.
Where'd that number come from? How come it's not 1,500 or 4,000 or?
2,000 is pretty much the average that we get for a single family dwelling. If we look at driveway, septic tank, house footprint, that's generally the number that gets put down on permits. So that's kind of where we went there. And there are other programs out there that use that same number. So we thought that would be a good number to use because it does kind of follow along the lines of some other programs that are out there.
It was also, thoroughly discussed at the zoning and planning.
So you get the input.
Yeah, so that's when there's opportunity for the for input from anybody.
Yeah, Bob recommended that, 2,000.
I thought I remembered that.
Yeah.
One thought, if the board wanted to act on this tonight, we feel like it's pretty well vetted, maybe except for the appeals piece. If the board chooses, the board could basically approve the ordinance that's before you, except for 96.17, which would be the appeal section. That means it would stay exactly the way it is, and we could then forward that on to the state and let them review it, and that way we wouldn't hold up the other modifications that are being proposed. Just a thought.
Are we under a deadline to the state? There's no rush as far as I'm concerned. I hear you, Shannon, but I hate to approve part of it.
Well,
we would be approving we just wouldn't be asking for the other part to be changed. The way it is now, they come to town council if there's a question, right?
Yeah, they'll sit.
And we would just leave the part where we were adding in the BOA. We just wouldn't address that at all.
Yeah, we wouldn't change that part of the ordinance.
Basically, we're just changing the square footage from 100 to 2,000.
Right. And they also may, have some other suggestions as far as something that we may have missed that's not in the model ordinance that has recently popped up.
I think that's okay.
Well, I would say, though, there may not be any sense of urgency to us or to the state.
Right.
If you have if I'm about to start a project out there and it involves a sedimentation erosion control permit, you know, and you're making this process a lot more practical or user-friendly.
I don't know that it makes it easier for me, but. it
No,
certainly
not
makes
for
it
you,
easier
but I mean for the people
Yeah.
that we're trying to represent
Right.
here.
So-
I think it would be important for them that we take an action on this as soon as we can.
So Shannon, you're recommending approving the ordinance with the exception of Section 8 in its entirety. Section 8 is the paragraph in question.
That's correct. That would be accurate.
So Section 8 of the ordinance in its entirety. Okay. All right, then, I make a motion that, let's see, where's our motion after that? Okay, I make a motion that we adopt ordinance 18-05-08 with the exception of Section 8 in its entirety, amending Chapter 96, Soil Erosion and Sedimentation Control Regulations.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. There is no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Clint.
Clint.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Clint.
Clint. Thank you, Shannon.
Yep. Okay, that brings us to item B here, which is the Uniform Guidance Procurement Policy.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Clint, good job. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That was well deserved.
A lot of
This
hard
is
work.
the Uniform Guidance Procurement Policy for the town of Lake Lure. And I think, Sam, your name's on here. You prepared to cover this, or should we call on Ron? Ron must have wrote your name down on here. Yeah.
Basically, it's just, specifically, actually, it's just for federal grants and guidelines for federal grants, pass through state grants, and certain thresholds and that we need to meet.
Keeps us legal.
Well, it really, one thing I noticed here, even under service contracts or repairs, if you do over $3,500 worth of anything, you've got to go through the entire bid procedure, MBE procedures. You go the whole 9 yards for anything $3,500 or more. Is that, there's federal law?
Yeah.
I mean, that's $3,500 you can spend fixing an air conditioner. You know. That's the biggest drawback I saw.
Do we have a choice?
No.
Well, we could not have any federal
Well,
funding
yeah, I
on
mean, that's
anything. We
your
could do
choice.
that and just,
Well, I don't know why we need to talk about it. We don't have a choice.
Well, I still like to.
Your sewer project is in
Federal
jeopardy.
government.
Your sewer project's in jeopardy if you don't pass the.
I like being strong armed.
But this document came from the state?
It came from the School of Government.
Okay. And you basically didn't change any wording? You just put the town of Lake Lure and put a cover sheet on it? All right. I noticed, here again, just because that's the model they send and the sample, that doesn't mean that it fits us.
Sam says we don't have a choice. We must accept it as is.
Can it be altered?
I bet it can.
I don't.
As long as it conforms to the law. Let's see.
Did they
Go
forget
for
to
it.
dot an I or cross a T, or what did they miss?
No, local governments are required to adopt written procurement policies that conform to applicable federal law and the uniform guidance, which is 2 CFR, blah, blah, when spending federal grant and loan award funds. Doesn't
You
mean
can probably
that-
change it if you're very careful in how you do it.
Well,
because-
sure.
Because
And
I've
you
seen
can
this
be-
document, I mean, it's it's very carefully drafted to make sure you comply. Anything you change, you might inadvertently.
William, would it be fair to say that we can have requirements that are more restrictive than what is in here, but probably not less restrictive.
That's usually the case, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
It's just a threshold.
If we adopt this like it is, and we have a project coming along that, we think we need more stringent, requirements on, we could impose them at the time, right?
Yes.
Here's an example. There's
What
several.
page you're on?
Well, 92, 93, and 94, all of them. There's several that require governing board approval. And there's others that don't. There's example, service contracts and purchase contracts costing $3,500 up to $90,000. Says nothing about governing board approval. I don't like the idea of a $90,000 contract potentially being approved without this council approving it. So is it illegal for us to require governing board approval for that
No.
particular type? Others have it, and then there's others that it says specifically it's not required. Here's service contracts costing $150,000 and above. Governing board approval is not required.
For federal grant purposes, but it might be your own policy to, or custom or both.
That is not what this document says. See, it doesn't refer you to a local policy, it doesn't mesh with any local policy. It's just saying governing board approval is not required. I don't like the idea of a contract being agreed to between $150 or over $150,000 without this board approving it.
Well, again, this is only for projects that
With federal
receive,
funds and pass-through.
funded partially or wholly by federal.
Got it. Yes, sir.
That doesn't mean council can't have a say just because there's federal money involved. It just means this is the minimum benchmark you gotta do to make sure you don't.
I think I understand that it's only when federal dollars are involved or state pass-through, loans, grants.
When do we have to have something on
Still
this?
don't like it.
July 1st, so it's
Okay,
either.
so we need to,
Yeah.
okay.
I will say that next month you will have a local procurement policy that's being prepared now for your consideration. So we can address some of those issues in that policy.
Okay.
Will that also address when federal funds?
It can, we can reference the federal policy and require board approval, say, for example, under certain contracts. So we would deal with it with that policy instead of the federal policy.
and we're gonna still follow the state law
We'll
as
still
far
have
as
to follow them.
purchasing
That's
and
right, yeah.
all that stuff, so.
So the state laws, I take it, are already, tighter than this?
Some of them, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it would make sense to, look at this next month with the, along with our town procurement policy update together.
I tell you, I
And
read
have a
this thing
chance to
in
review
great
them.
detail, and I am not comfortable with it.
I didn't like it.
Not
Yeah,
comfortable.
I agree.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we just take, is that gonna hurt anything?
No, as long as we have this adopted by July 1st. it's-
All right,
yeah.
let's just do that. Let's just table it and then we'll be able to tie it into our own.
Well, if we're going to do that, and do we need to
Make a motion to table.
well,
to
I'm
a
just,
time certain?
here's what I'm thinking. Do we need to have, if Stephen's not happy with it and he's found all the things about it, does he need to work with somebody so when we come back in June, we've got something we can work with better? That's what I'm asking.
Especially for our in-house.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we could maybe have a subcommittee, just, Stephen and,
Bob, you had comments on it too?
Bob and,
I just didn't like the thresholds, but John, that's your forte too, so why don't you and Steve handle that?
well, I'm fine with it
Well,
like it is.
I would like to see,
Yeah.
with regard to the stuff that comes from the school of government, the implementation guidance, that would be there probably within that document. And
Bless you.
what municipalities have to do and under what circumstance. I'd like to see that, not just a copy of the uniform guidance policy from way up in Washington or wherever it comes from, just passed right through the channels to us.
Well, John, if you don't want to do it, let's have a subcommittee of one and let Stephen be the one to handle that.
All right, I'm available if you need my help, Stephen.
Well, don't need a subcommittee. I mean, Ron said next month they're gonna be doing the local and mesh that with this, and in the meantime, I'd like to see the school of government document and the implementation guidance.
Okay, and when you see that, though, you may make,
I'll get with Ron. if I
Okay.
have issues.
All right.
Thank
Okay.
you.
But for the time being, I recommend that we defer the action on this until at least next month.
Okay, that's fine with
Next
me.
month.
All with you.
What, June the, what's our, June 12th?
Yep.
I make a
work.
motion, we defer action on the uniform guidance procurement policy until our June 12th council meeting.
Okay, a motion, there's a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Cameron. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Thank you,
Okay,
Sam.
thanks, Sam. Okay,
Sam.
that brings us to the item C, which was to be the 2018-19 budget preparation and call for public hearing. I think, Ron, based on your comments earlier in the special meeting, you still would like us to address the call for public hearing at this time, is that
That's correct, yes.
correct? Okay, so there is a suggested motion here that would schedule the public hearing to our next regularly scheduled meeting on June 12th. Somebody want to make that motion?
I'll make the motion that we schedule a public hearing on June 12th, 2018 at 6 p.m. or soon thereafter as possible.
Sorry.
Pardon?
Five.
5 o'clock.
You said
Oh,
6.
5. It's, well, mine says 6.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was the change.
I made that change.
Old document.
Mine says 6, I apologize.
All right, so 5 o'clock, the motion.
5 o'clock p.m. or soon thereafter as possible to discuss the proposed 2018-19 annual budget.
All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Weber. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Brings us to the final item under this area of the agenda, which is engineering service contract for operations, maintenance, and inspection plan. This is a contract with Clinton Power Company.
Yes.
Ron, you handle it?
I will. David, of course, is not here.
Yeah.
You saw in your recommendations from Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the dam safety report, as well as the recommendation from the risk managers at Travelers Insurance through the League of Municipalities, that we are required to as quickly as possible adopt an OMI plan. Clifton Power Company has submitted a bid for $4,600. I will note that as you go through it, you will see that unfortunately some of that work was done before a contract was put into place, roughly about, let's see, where was it?
I remember seeing it.
Yeah, $3,600 is remaining out of it, so with that, it's $3,850. So what we're requesting is, even though some of that work was completed, the full contract amount is $4,200, and that's what we're asking, or I'm sorry, $4,600, which is what we're asking approval for.
Does this, under this maintenance, is he including the medium voltage switch gear and that type of equipment?
I don't know. I would have to ask.
Well, in other
Switchgear.
words, in other words, the high voltage once it leaves that generator,
Goes to the
the
step
equipment there and that kind of thing, the relays are, give them a problem, those should be replaced. The wiring to them, the switching to them. But the medium voltage gear you have down there is very old. In fact, that room, if you go in there, you're actually subject to getting yourself lit up.
Ooh.
So it needs to be included in this long-term maintenance process, because the medium voltage gear there, you're subject to about 2,700 volts coming off of that generator.
We'll certainly ask.
So I just want to make sure it's included, because that switch gear is getting to be obsolete, and It's kind of a safety hazard if you walk in that room.
Where would that likely be, in his chapter 2, proposed chapter 2?
Yeah, yes, power facilities, yes. But it is an important part of it because actually years ago I reported some of those cables and all should be replaced and updated, and that's never happened as well.
Okay.
I looked for, this does include the emergency aspect, which was also required by the dam report. So Clifton Power Company is doing the one for the hydroelectric, Dr. Marks is doing the one for the dam.
For the dam, that's correct.
And those two OMI plans, both of them have emergency sections that meet the requirement of the report.
Yes, sir.
The work that was already completed, do we have it?
No, it was just hours invested in the plan itself. We do not have a copy of it.
Okay. And we don't really have any proof of that either, do we? Okay. How many copies do we get for that first $250 he shows, and then he shows actual cost for printing and binding will be based upon number of copies made? But do we know how many we get for that first 250?
No, usually what we've been requesting is 2, sometimes 3, but we will make copies from there. So the printing cost will be less than that, I'm certain.
Okay. I mean, I hope we're not just getting one copy, because it doesn't say that anywhere. So we need to ask him that specifically. So.
With that, I'll be glad to make the motion to approve the engineering service contract with Clifton Power Company in the amount not to exceed $4,600, and to authorize the town manager to execute the agreement.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Cameron. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Weber. I did have one question, a couple of questions, which I'll ask now in discussion with you, Ron, and you likely don't know the answer, and I think I would know this answer, but I have a bit of a difficult time pulling apart the operation of the power station from the regulation of lake levels in the dam. I say that from the standpoint of, maximizing, optimizing the generation of power at the power station, which has a lot to do with the regulation of storage in the storage volume in the lake and how far down we draw it at any particular time. And I suspect that I'm just guessing this operating plan is really probably not designed or does not address procedures for optimum operation of this power station, and I feel like we need to have that because it's such an important aspect of the town's revenue stream. And that would get into things like, when do you generate power, during the peak rate periods, and and so that's one aspect of it that I would like to see us pursue and address. And then the second thing that we've run into that connects to the operation of the dam is, this notion of what would be a limit of the amount of drawdown fall in lake levels, which would not place any inappropriate stress on our dam. I mean, we keep hearing this situation, and so if it's not being addressed in this O&M thing, then it really needs to be addressed in whatever Dr. Marks is working on. He's well aware of that, and but a part of that is when we're generating power, because when we open up that penstock, the level starts dropping, particularly with the big generator. And if in the future we ever crank up both generators, I'm suspecting that could drop the level pretty quickly. So I say all that because I just see all that being interconnected, and it's really critical part of our operation. We should spend some time and money on.
You're loading and unloading a dead weight. So,
anyway.
Yeah, no, we agree, and I think at least one of the 3 that you mentioned is being handled by Dr. Marks, but we can certainly bring up the others.
And the other thing that I would like to see in the power power station operating plan is the procedure is the requirement for the keeping of daily, weekly, and monthly logs of by us of how much power is generated when, and then some that can be converted to graphing, to see how power is actually being generated. So we see when it's not being generated, and we need to know why.
Well, that would also be a great quality control check. I'm sure Sam gets something to know whether or not the money we get from Duke is the correct amount, but to verify, them, how much they're paying us for and how much we lose to that capacity credit that's in litigation.
Right.
You should have a peak, non-peak loading.
We do, and Sam gets a report. It's done at the end of, very close after the end of the month, but that's,
Right.
we're in hindsight, we're looking backwards, and it doesn't get into any detail about how power was generated day over day. And I see some numbers down in the $30,000 a month. That was the last one I saw, which they don't jive with what I've heard that power station should be capable of generating on a month-to-month basis, which is nearly double that. So it's something I think we should monitor more closely. And
if those numbers were from April when we had all that rain, I mean, so we need to look at accuracy.
I think that's,
quality control.
okay, well, enough said. I don't want to drag it out, but, okay.
Thank you.
We have a motion second.
We have a motion and second. We had discussion. That's right. We need to vote on. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. Yes.
Well, before you finish, if it's not out of order, I had one more item that I left off on the LAB.
Oh.
And I just want to speak to it. It won't take but a second. And I sent all of you an email this afternoon. I sent Ron an email this afternoon on the debris in the lake. And it's as bad this year as I've ever seen it, and not necessarily big, huge things, but I'm where I get it all at the dam, and I had sent a thing to Dean in early April when we were getting all that rain, and it's not Dean's responsibility, the trash gate and stuff, and he passed it on to Donnie. I'm not sure if he sent it to David too or not, but. David and to Donnie. And so for 10 days, the trash gate's been up. If you know how it works, it just, with that trash gate up, it kind of pulls the current to that trash gate. And therefore the trash goes there and it goes through. And sometimes they have to sit down there in a boat and the log gets across it and all that, but that trash gets on through. And it's been open for 10 days. But the barrier's been across the lake and for the whole 10 days, and there's no way the trash can get past the barrier to get to the trash gate. So I don't know what the problem is or who, but it's something that needs to be fixed tomorrow. Because I'm telling you, it's nasty down at the dam. It is really nasty down at the dam with sticks, wood, mulch. Everything, stuff that's all this wind we've had, stuff blowing off the trees, limbs, and I can't imagine why that thing's been open 10 days without the barrier being moved. So that needs to be addressed tomorrow.
Yes, sir. Please.
I'd like to add, and I forgot, Shannon, I want to thank you, all your work on the strip mall. There's a lot of research and putting things together there. I appreciate it. You've done a really thorough job on getting information for that project for us. And Dustin, everybody know Dustin's the new interim fire chief. Officially, congratulations. Hang on to your hat. Be ready.
Okay, well, that brings us to the last item of regular business, and we have the final couple of items, the first being closed session. So I would entertain a motion here to go into closed session, and after which we will reconvene our meeting and act on any decisions or actions or follow-up that comes from that, right?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we enter closed session in accordance with General Statute 143-318.11, sub A, sub 5, and sub A, sub 6, for the purpose of discussing property acquisition and personnel matters respectively.
We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, by Bob. All right, all
Could
those
I
in favor?
request Dean Givens be allowed in for at least the first portion?
Yes, make a motion that we accept Dean Givens into that closed session for the property acquisition portion.
Okay, very good. So that's a motion, you accept that as a second, and so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we are temporarily adjourned to special session.
Take a short break.
Yes.
Short break, 5 minutes. Yeah, we gotta have.
It always takes a while to get from here.
Yeah.